Welcome to the Panthers Movie Den. This is our first episode coming back from the winter break. We just got access to the room, and we're just going to be talking about a recap of 2021, what we saw and didn't yet discuss in depth yet, and also what we are looking forward to this year in 2022. So we're going to start off with some movies that we felt exceeded our expectations. Among the movies that we saw this year, there may have been some that we were going in maybe not expecting the best from, or not expecting to be as good as it was. So, Gary, what fell into that category for you?
The two movies that exceeded my expectations are both horror movies. A Quiet Place Part 2 and Candyman. With A Quiet Place Part 2, I did not expect it to live up to the first one because I really liked the first one. Don't get me wrong, I was still really excited for Part 2, but I just had very low expectations because, I mean, the common trope with horrors, they have a really good first one, and the sequel is just terrible. So I kind of had that same mentality going into this, and I was actually I was pretty concerned too because I really thought the first one did not need a sequel, did not need a follow-up.
A lot of people thought that.
Yeah, even though it did end in a cliffhanger, I thought it was a cliffhanger that really didn't need to be followed up. But it really surprised me with just how it really maintained the feelings, the scares, the tension from the first one. And even though it did have a bigger budget and it did feel bigger, it never felt too different, and it never felt like it still always remained interesting. And I really liked how they expanded the Quiet Place universe, and it wasn't anything too crazy like where you see where these monsters originate from or anything. It was just simply how other people survived and how they deal with this issue. And I really love the whole idea of there's this whole island far away that people have just basically restarted civilization again. And I thought that was a really clever idea, really cool. And also, while I was watching the movie, I really liked how at one point I had no idea what they were going to do anymore, because, and what I mean by that is it wasn't predictable. I agree with that. Yeah, I had honestly no clue what was going to happen because I thought it was going to go a different way. I compared it to the Lost World, where Jurassic Park, where I thought that they're going to gather a little group of people and then go back and retrieve the family members and then get picked off by all the monsters, but that is not what happened. The monsters came to them.
Ends on another cliffhanger.
Yeah, it does. And I'm very excited to see what they do for Part 3. I do hope that John Krasinski does come back to direct it. I think they're doing a spin-off or something that he's not directing. But with Part 3, I'm not I would hope that he does come back. And I think he's really proving himself to be a really good horror director, because this is probably one of the best horror movies that I've seen recently. Probably one of the better modern ones, both Part 1 and Part 2. I think that it's a very unique concept, and it's genuinely intense.
Yeah, I'll just jump in now because Quiet Place Part 2 also falls under my exceeded expectations category. And I distinctly remember this movie getting delayed because it was really the first one to get a big delay because of COVID. And it was also the first movie that I saw going back to the theater since March of 2020 when I saw Onward. And I think that really added to how much I felt engrossed in the movie, and how much I don't think it would have been as tense if we saw it at home, if it went on demand. Yeah. I'm glad they waited. I'm glad it did well again at the box office. And the movie set up, like you were saying, it's very interesting, and it poses a lot of directions that Krasinski could have gone in, but I think he went in the best way possible. And the movie, I think, is not only visually on par with the first, but the tension is almost as good too, and the acting, of course, also. And Emily Blunt, she gives another great performance. The two younger actors play her kids good Great performances, and Cillian Murphy's in there as well. I wonder if they're gonna pull another Cillian Murphy, another known actor, to have a little bit of a supporting part in the third one. That'll be pretty interesting if they do that as a common theme throughout the sequels. And I think what primarily sets this one apart from the first is obviously the setting, but it's more than that because I think that the movie expands the world, like Gary was saying again, and lessens in more information of the survivors of the invasion, if you want to call it an invasion. But going along with this same idea, I think that the one thing I'm glad about them is not revealing the origin of these monsters. Definitely. Because it's something that's not necessary to begin with, and it would just be a completely useless. When you think about it, it's useless. Some people may say, I want to know where they came from, want to know deeper lore, if you want to call it that, but it's not necessary, and it just will be a tangent from the movie. It'll ruin the pacing too. I think even if it's an interesting explanation, it's not necessary, and I think that Krasinski made a very good choice there.
Yeah.
And also, I think what needs to be mentioned is his writing, because he wrote and directed this, and I think he's really proving himself there too. And I'm excited to see what he does with the third one too. And I'll definitely be there opening weekend for that. But the most accurate way I can describe these movies is it's like a TV show with hour-and-a-half long episodes, because it leaves you at the end with a cliffhanger, and it really makes you want to come back. But it's one of those things that I think genuinely captures my interest. That's an original thing, but it's also a mainstream property at this point. But I really liked the movie. I didn't think it was quite as good as the first one, and I'll just mention about the first one also that I hadn't seen it since theaters before I watched it before seeing part 2. But the first one, it really holds up on second watch. Even if you know what's coming, it's still a really tense movie. I still think it's better than part 2, but part 2 is definitely worth checking out, in my opinion.
It's a great, it's a phenomenal follow-up, and I think it's probably one of the best, off the top of my head, that I can think of, like 1-2 pairs.
Yeah.
For horror.
At least recently.
Yeah, to watch back to back, I think it's great. It's perfect. And kind of going back to what you were saying before about like the whole origin and stuff, I feel like if they did explain the origin, it would just not make it scary anymore. Because then, since I see a lot of horror movies, I feel like the one big mistake so many movies make is start explaining the killer, demon, whatever, and it's just not scary anymore. Because part of what makes them terrifying is the mystery behind them. You don't know like what these things are. You don't know where they came from. You don't know what they worship or anything. But like you don't need to know that, because that's what makes them scary. And that's why I was like super happy that they did not dive into that. And I like how you do learn a little more about them, but only through the characters' experiences.
Yeah.
That I think is really good.
It doesn't spoon feed you it, but it also, it's enough to keep you interested where you're not confused what's going on.
And I also really like too that the movie is really clever. It really found in my opinion, very unique ways to like solve situations. And like the one that I think of the most is the whole Beyond the Sea thing. I thought that was super clever. Yeah. And like stuff like that I really love. That it still maintains like the cleverness, the uniqueness, and originality from the first one. Like, yeah, this is a sequel, but it still feels very much original. And
you also mentioned Candyman, right?
Yeah.
Just quickly.
Candyman, when I first saw the trailer, it's horrible. Like, the trailers and marketing for this movie is terrible. It makes it look like your basic, generic horror movie. And Candyman's also not a property that's, like, huge. It's known, but it's not, like Halloween, or not even close. And I've never seen the first one before this, but I checked it out, and I liked it. It wasn't terrible, but at the same time, it's not one of my favorites, but it's a really interesting concept. And with this new one, I thought it was a perfect follow-up to the first one, because
was it a follow-up?
Yeah, it was a follow-up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a sequel. I'm not sure if it was like ignoring all the other sequels, but it was supposed to be a sequel to the first one.
Oh, I thought it was just a complete reboot.
No, it still had lots of elements from the first one, and it was cool because they, again, like really expand upon it. They don't just remake it. They expanded upon it, and I thought it was super interesting, and I really like the whole concept of the movie too. It's really interesting. It's not like your basic slasher movie. It has more of a meaning behind it, and it's also, it had beautiful cinematography. It took place in Chicago, modern Chicago, and just a lot of the shots were really stunning of these buildings from kind of like a low angle looking up, and you almost see them kind of, it looks like infinite, the buildings and stuff, and all like the graffiti everywhere and stuff. It was beautifully shot, and I thought it was a really interesting movie. And going into it, I had no expectations because, again, the marketing looked terrible. It was horrible. And also, that type of movie, like reboots of like big franchises like that, don't have the best reputation. So I really wasn't expecting anything from it. But I actually found myself really enjoying it. And it was, I thought, really clever. And like Candyman is not my favorite thing in the world, like the series as a whole, but they really work well together.
Yeah, and no surprise too, coming from Jordan Peele producing it.
Yeah, it felt, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it's as good as Jordan Peele's movies like Us and Get Out. It's definitely not there, but you can definitely feel his influence. It's definitely there, but it's just not as strong as those, but his influence is there, and I think that's what really helps a lot too.
Alright, Nick, what exceeded your expectations?
I'd say that Missiles vs. Machines kind of exceeded my expectations. I mean, they were high and I was kind of excited for it, but at the end of the day, it is still a very good film that did subvert my expectations on what it was originally going to be, even if it wasn't really all there cohesively. But at the end of the day, it's a what I like to call character film, where just like there's two characters that essentially just carry the film for me, and those characters are Katie and the young son, who are both very brilliant characters, who are very well acted, and the movie as a whole is very, I'd say that it is very well like animated. I mean, it's not like Spider-Verse animated, but still kind of there.
Yeah, it has a unique feeling to it too.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but it looks like very zany.
Yeah, I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought that it wasn't really much to write home about, but it's an enjoyable movie, and I would generally recommend it because the characters were interesting, like you were saying, Nick, and it's something. It may seem like a little basic or at least to me personally, I thought that it was pretty good. It's a modern take on old themes that you've heard all the time, but it does do some original stuff that elevates it a little bit. But the thing for me is that it just constantly switched between being really creative and just sometimes kind of cringe-worthy, even though I don't like using that word. But
I mean, it was a little cringe at some points, but like there was this like this knowingness of like self-awareness that it kind of had.
Yeah,
that, like,
yeah,
it kind of knew what it kind of knew that it was a little bit on the cringe side.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, that's kind of what you get when you make an internet film.
That's true.
When you kind of make a film that like talks about the internet, it's like bound to be a little bit cringy.
Yeah, even though I think that it did overly pander at times to some of their kids, that's kind of the sacrifice you need to make to make a movie that's otherwise pretty original. And yeah, like I said, I would generally recommend that also.
Yeah. And then I think I have another one. I don't know. Like, stuff exceeded my expectations, but it wasn't like 20... It wasn't really like last year where like I had two films that really, really exceeded it. It was like, okay, this is fantastic. But like I said, another one would be Tick, Tick, Boom. Even if, again, I did have kind of high expectations, but also kind of weary of, like, is Lin-Manuel a good director? Let's find out. Because I was also, if this sucked, I was ready just to tear into the fact that Lin-Manuel was not a good director. But it's good. It's another character thing. But then again, this is kind of a biopic. Even if the storytelling is a bit confusing. Well, it's not really a biopic. Because it's, I guess... Well, it's a biopic in the sense of it tells a story of one famous person's life. But it's originally a musical. And I think it was just the thing of I was not expecting to like a performance as much as I did, and that was Andrew Garfield as Jonathan Larson, who did such a fantastic job that I kind of only really saw him as that when I went into a certain other film.
Would you say that you think Lin-Manuel Miranda has some potential in making some original movies? Because at this... No? Okay.
I think it is just because, like, this really feels like his only film that he's really going to direct in this case, unless that Hamilton film gets made, then he might go back to the directing.
Are they still planning that? I thought they kind of abandoned that after they released it, the filmed live musical. I may be wrong.
I think they are, but it's like a while. I don't think it's even in development. I think I just heard that, like, the idea of the Hamilton thing.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something on a much bigger scope, so I think that would definitely prove how much he really has in the directing sphere. But, alright, so moving beyond that, we're just gonna switch gears and go to most disappointing movies that we saw this past year. I'll start out this time, and I'll say that Pixar's movie Luca was a movie that I kind of had semi-high expectations for, because I liked the subject matter. I liked that they were going a little smaller scale, going back to an original story, but overall the technical elements are what elevate this for me, but the story and characters are nothing to brag about in my opinion. It's disappointing for Pixar standards, but still fine. I love the animation, obviously. Some of the stuff they've done is just makes you think, how is this humanly possible? Yeah. Especially when you look at other movies and how much Pixar just blows them out of the water. The music is nice, but again, it's upsettingly base level for Pixar, because I just always have high expectations for Pixar based on everything else they've done.
Okay, so, like, for me, after, like, that, the God Tier Heights of Soul, which was so fantastic.
Yep.
It's not even funny. Like, that film is so, like, fantastic. That, to me, brought, like, Pixar to be back, like, in some way after, like...
To the original stuff, at least.
Yeah, because that's, like, for me, like, top Pixar. Like, besides Toy Story, that would probably be, for me, top Pixar. But, like, to me, both Inside Out and Coco were honestly not, like... They were not as good as people were saying it. Inside Out definitely was not as good as people were saying it. Coco kind of, like, in some points, but also it was so flawed. But to me, like, Soul was just bringing back classic Pixar. So, like, when Luca came out, I was always like, this is just gonna be, like, a low tier Pixar. Just, like, not really gonna be, like... It wasn't gonna be as good as Soul. Like, I knew that going in.
Yeah, I knew that too.
Like, there was no way this was good as Soul. So, like, when I went in, I was like, alright, like, there's definitely flaws in it. The characters aren't really that great, but at the same time, there's also... I'd say the positives kind of outweigh the negatives. Like,
I would say, a little bit.
And if you kind of... And it's not really a film you really need to think about. It's more just like a chill... It's more just like a chill film.
I was gonna say, Luca... It almost feels like... It's just like something that... It's nice. It's just, I feel like
that's a good word for it.
Like,
that's a very good word for it.
Like, I mean, it's not depressing. It's not something that is so philosophical. It's just super simple, and it's just nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't deny it from being enjoyable.
Right.
In the slightest,
it's fun, but I would not consider it like top 10.
Yeah, not nearly for me, at least.
I have trouble coming up with a top 10 Pixar.
Yeah,
because it's just so many good ones. But I wouldn't say also that Luca's one of the worst. I wouldn't say that either. I would just say it's on the lower half.
Yeah.
It's not... It's just... I think one...
You expect more than just someone learns to accept another person. You expect more than that, I think.
It's kind of tough because like it is a small movie and I'm aware of that, but I just feel like the stakes were just so small.
That's very true too.
Like I know
they almost like felt non-existent at times.
I know, like it is a small movie and it's not gonna have like a let's save the world aspect, but I just thought it was just a little too small. But I mean, I could see what they're going for because it's just kids, so maybe it's not like they're gonna like try to like rescue their family or anything. But I mean, it is, I guess, fairly realistic in that aspect. But I mean, for a movie, I think you need a little more.
Yeah.
And also, I have mixed feelings about the quote-unquote bad guy because
As
he's
most
like
too
the
childish.
bullies.
Yeah, he's too childish. But one thing I would really applaud from them is that he has no like sympathetic backstory or anything. He's just a jerk.
Yeah.
They don't need to go in like, oh, this happened when he was a baby, this and that, like, which is
someone stole his bike after they killed his parents.
Yeah, like, you know, that's a common trope that a lot of Disney animated movies have been doing lately, a sympathetic villain. So I'm really happy that they didn't do that. But at the same time, I thought he was just too cartoony, almost.
Yeah.
Where it just felt like a joke, kind of. It didn't feel like a genuine.
And again, just coming off such a more, if you want to use the word deeper movie like Soul, which just has much more.
Soul like made me think about things.
Yeah.
But with
much more substance to it is what I'm trying to say.
And I'd also say that I mean Pixar is typically very funny, but I didn't think Luca was that funny. I didn't find it like as funny as their other
Soul
movies.
was surprisingly very funny.
Soul was very funny.
Soul didn't have a lot of jokes, but the jokes that were Soul didn't have a lot of jokes. But the jokes that were in there landed it very well.
Yeah. Also, they make jokes that, and this is what Pixar usually does. They make jokes that they know aren't going to age poorly. Like they just make kind of like general jokes, not specific references. And I think that's also what separates Pixar a lot. But what I've always said, I mean, this is just turned into a Luca versus Soul thing. But what I've always said about Pixar movies and really just animation geared towards kids movies in general is that you always know it's going to be a happy ending, but it's just what they put in between from the beginning to the end that makes it good. And I think that's what Soul did good. And I think that Luca didn't have enough to really interest me as much as Pixar's other movies. It was fine. Watch it if you want. That's what I would say.
I have similar feelings for their upcoming one, Turning Red. I have very similar feelings that it's going to be very similar to Luca, that it's probably no doubt going to be enjoyable because it's Pixar. They have good ideas, and I mean, they really don't make horrible movies, like unwatchable. I mean, you can argue Cars too, but I mean, it's not unwatchable. But I have a feeling that Turning Red is going to be very similar, where it's going to be very low. And I have much more expectations for Lightyear.
Right.
So for me, disappointing. I don't really have a disappointing film. I just have a film that I think was just like eh. And to me, that was In the Heights. Because like, I wouldn't say I was excited for it, but more just like, I wasn't excited. More just like I was kind of curious on where this was gonna go. And like then I saw the trailers and I was like, okay, this kind of has potential to go somewhere. And then I saw it, and it was like good, but then that was good, but like not great. Then I saw it again, and I was like, this is kind of okay. And then I saw it again, and I was like, this is so flawed. I can't like. I think the thing about the film is just like, cause it goes from good like to brilliant and like it can't keep the brilliance up.
That happens
like,
in musicals a lot too.
Yeah, because the opening's amazing, and then it just kind of like mellows out, and then it gets to 96,000, and that's also amazing, and then it just really goes downhill. Like, and then spoilers, I guess, but like, then a character dies, and the character's death is very bad because it's very poorly explained what really happened, and then it just kind of goes off the rails. So I wouldn't say disappointed, it's more just like, eh.
Yeah. I think especially after you already know, or you personally, Nick, already know what to expect from Miranda at this point.
Yeah.
I can't say his damn name even though I know it. I know, but I can't get it out.
For me, my most disappointing movie was Malignant, because I really like James Wan's horror movies. He directed both Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2 and Insidious. I'm not a big fan of Saw.
I actually been meaning to check out the first Saw movie, because apparently the first Saw movie, which apparently is the only good Saw movie, is still a good movie. It's like a great movie.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I've heard too.
It's just not my thing. It's not my cup of tea.
I wouldn't go on my way to check it out though.
It's, in my opinion, it's too graphic. I don't like that. And I also don't like seeing people in constant torture and pain. But
wow, what's wrong with you?
But so I had pretty high expectations going into this, because I will say that The Conjuring 1 and 2 are scary. They're not creepy. They're not intense. They're scary.
They are. Like, as somebody who doesn't really like horror that much, The Conjuring 1 is actually a very good film.
Yeah, and they have really likable characters, and it's intense. It's scary. So I had expectations, pretty high expectations for Malignant, and they were marketing this as like the new face of horror. Like, this is gonna change the game.
Never heard that before.
This is gonna change the game. It's super unique and stuff. And yes, it's unique, but not in a good way. And sure, it's something that I've never heard of. Never heard anyone else come up with an idea like it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. And it's just too crazy. Way too crazy for what it is. And it was kind of marketed like a Conjuring movie. The trailers make it seem like it's very similar to a Conjuring movie. And it starts out that way, and then it just completely goes in a different direction, which I guess I appreciate, but at the same time, I didn't like the direction it went in. It turned into then like a murder mystery. Oh, and just so you know, the movie's basically about a woman who has these visions of people getting murdered, and it's almost like she's there with them, but they're just visions, and she's able to like sense what's gonna happen, and there's this like creature that's like murdering all these people, and she's able to see it happen. Like, she's like closes her eyes and is able to see it happen, even though she's like not physically there. But
so I mean, that's one of those things that sounds good on paper.
It's creative,
at least.
yeah. I mean, it's a creative concept, but then it turns into a murder mystery that's not interesting at all, and then it turns into a complete action movie. It's not even. It's insane. Like it has some like.
I mean, not that I don't give things chances, but I feel like just looking at that, I can already tell it's a mess.
Yeah, it's like 3 different movies, and also the writing is terrible, and that's pretty upsetting, because I thought the writing in Insidious and The Conjuring was really solid. It was really
James
well done.
Wan wrote this also?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I was just shocked about how terrible the writing and dialogue was, especially the dialogue. I mean, I don't even know if the actors were trying, to be honest, but it's not only them. The writing itself was just terrible. It sounded like a first draft, basically. It sounded so strange, like so robotic, like
just kind of spitting everything out, also. Because he probably had a good idea in his head, and you know.
Yeah, and also, I like to say that when this movie started, I know there's this little trope in movies where the film begins, but it's done like super corny. It's super. It's like super bad, but then it pans out and it shows the characters watching that movie. But like, whatever they were watching is shown like an actual movie. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I thought they were gonna do that in this, but it just kept going. It just kept going. And
They
I'm
never
like,
revealed that the entire movie was just one big joke.
yeah, no, and I'm like, oh, this is real. This is actual dialogue. Like, I mean, this is not a direct quote, but the movie opens up with like a bunch of scientists like taking in the alien monster, whatever it was, and like, it was like, quick, go to the emergency room, like stuff like that, you know. And I seriously thought it was a joke. Like, I really thought it was gonna pan out and be a joke, but no. That's how the writing was. And I just feel like this movie is just a weird combo of like The Conjuring and Saw at the same time. It is just a very strange combo. And I mean, I will say, when the big reveal happens, it is very shocking. And it's very disgusting. It's like, it's horrific. I'll give him that. But
Would have been better if you were already on board, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just so disappointing, and I don't recommend it.
The one I would say is definitely my most disappointing of the year, based on how much I was anticipating it, is Edgar Wright's new movie, Last Night in Soho. Now, I'm a big Edgar Wright fan, so like I said, my expectations are already high for this movie. But it's upsetting to say that I was disappointed in some parts, which was in part caused by how much I already love all of his previous work and how this doesn't compare as being as high tier as his other movies. I'll start with the positives. The acting was really great. Thomasin McKenzie, Anya Taylor-Joy, and even Matt Smith were all good. The camera work was expectedly on point. If you see any other Edgar Wright movies, he's always doing really innovative stuff with that. And the cinematography is stunning too. The writing, though not as clever as Wright's other work, both due to the movie just being generally less comedic and having less opportunities to be funny being presented, and this movie just having a different tone as a whole, the writing's still good, and I can gladly say that had me questioning what was happening throughout, but in a good way. And Wright's reputation made me expect a movie with twists and turns and intriguing characters, and I wasn't let down in that aspect of the movie, but in all, the movie just fell flat for me, and especially at the end, and the entire purpose and the intention of the movie. Like, at the beginning, it seemed to be a pretty conventional storyline following Thomasin McKenzie's character, but it eventually turns into what I had initially had thought to be like a Rosemary's Baby type psychological thriller, but it just later proves to be a full-on horror movie, and I think that's what might have hurt it in the long run, because I really like the idea of Thomasin McKenzie's character being tortured by what she wished for most through her dreams, affecting her in real life, which is a really interesting concept. But the eventual twist just leaves me asking why the movie as a whole is, it has me asking why the twist is as important as it's made out to be. Because like I said, I like the psychological horror elements of the movie, but the purpose of making, I won't say the spoiler, but the purpose of making the reveal of the real villain of the movie loses its effect for me the more you think about it. Because looking back at the grander scheme of the movie, to me, I don't think it was even necessary for the reveal. I won't reveal anything, but for what they end up revealing. And I think that the movie still could have worked very well as a whole if the main character learned to fight her inner demons, if you want to say it like cliche. But it seems that Edgar Wright's love for horror just took hold in a kind of messy way in the third act, and he decided to change the course of the movie, which kind of threw me off guard. But that's at least how I saw it. I can definitely see how people will like this movie. I didn't hate it in the slightest, but it was just disappointing to me as a whole, and I think that through some rewrites, the idea of the 60s aren't as good as what they're made out to be, like through media and music, things like that, still could have worked without the twist, which I think he might have threw in there. Maybe he didn't think that the movie was building up enough tension, even though I thought that it did, and it had really interesting ideas. But I think it kind of fell apart towards the end. And for people that have seen the movie, I think that Thomasin McKenzie's character, her reaction to what the real villain ends up doing, she ends up accepting sort of what the real villain does, and it made no sense to me. But to sum up all of that in a sentence or two, I was on board with Mackenzie's character feeling trauma as a result of her mother's death, but that idea was very much sidelined in the third act. And what I thought the movie was about at first was her learning to get over that hurdle in her life that she's clearly attached to. But again, I was just disappointed by the lack of really a meaningful storyline when it comes down to things. But I would recommend it, especially if you're an Edgar Wright fan or even just an Edgar Wright completist. It was a well-made movie, technically. I don't think anyone can really deny that, but it really didn't hit all cylinders for me.
I think the first trailer was really good, and then I saw the second trailer and I was like, alright, I'm not really on board for this.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've been meaning to get to all the Edgar Wright stuff, mainly because I love Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and to get to the Cornettos and all this other stuff, so. Yeah,
the Cornetto trilogy is one of some of my favorite comedies, so I would definitely recommend that to anyone who made listening to this and they had enjoyed Last Night in Soho. Definitely check out Edgar Wright's other movies. Yeah. So now we're just going to move on to some movies that kind of fell in the gray area, had some mixed feelings on. So what do you think, Gary?
Okay, so for me, mixed feelings.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah. Okay, Gary. No, go ahead. Go.
Yeah.
Oh, bad. So for me, mixed feelings. I'd say the Many Saints of Newark, because I was so insanely hyped for this because those trailers were so fantastic. And then I went in and I saw it and I liked it, and I really liked it at first. But then I had to I then took a step back and I was like, this is not good. This is it's the acting's fantastic and the characters are not really that great, but I'd say I think I'm just mixed on this because I watched The Sopranos and I really like The Sopranos, and I think it was just kind of cool seeing all this new lore, I guess, getting built into it. But then the negatives really outweigh the positives. First, it's too short. It's 2 hours, but doesn't feel like it goes in enough on what made The Sopranos so good. Also, there's a missed opportunity that I saw in terms of because they did this with anybody here Breaking Bad fans?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see El Cameo?
Oh, El Camino, yeah.
Yeah, El Camino. You know how how there's in the opening scene there's the thing of Walter White's grave.
Yeah.
That's confirmed that he died. There should have, I guess, kind of been a similar thing in the Many Saints of Newark, which still kind of left a cliffhanger up in the air, which was kind of irritating. Michael, I forget his last name, but the guy who plays Christopher Moltisanti on the show, his narration was kind of it didn't really add anything. The stuff with, first of all, the marketing is kind of lied about what it really was, because it's really not a Tony Soprano origin story, more so a Tiki Moltisanti origin story. With Tony Soprano kind of sprinkled in, which is why I feel the Michael Gandolfini had so much potential, and a lot of this is kind of missed because he's barely in it, and that's kind of a drag for the film. There's also so many unanswered questions that I still have about the film.
Do they have any plans of making anything else associated with The Sopranos?
Which I think they might do. I don't know. Because, it leaves open, it leaves room open for a sequel movie that, I don't really know if I want or not. Mainly just that, and, then there's a great twist that's not going to get explored because the show's over. It's not going to go... nothing about it in the show is really... Nothing in the show... I guess what I'm trying to say is, there's a great twist in the movie that's not going to get explained because the show's over. And, there's that I really would have liked explored, I guess, in the TV show, but now the twist kind of feels wasted. And, it's also kind of annoying because David Chase, the main guy who was in the main writer of Sopranos wrote it, and it just feels so... It feels so hollow, yet, also kind of intriguing, I guess is my feelings on it.
Yeah, even though I can't speak for The Sopranos since I haven't seen it, that was odd to me, knowing that, and I haven't seen Many Saints of Newark, but it's odd to me that many people have been feeling like you are feeling about it, Nick, because the original talent behind the camera came back. But like I said, I can't speak for The Sopranos, but in general, with TV shows like Breaking Bad, I think El Camino was a good addition, but sometimes you just gotta let it rest and just leave it how it is, unless something you really necessarily feel like you need to tell.
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking about that, and if they do this again, or if they do this to another classic HBO show. In this case, The Wire, which I haven't seen The Wire, but it's my dad's favorite show of all time, and I've been meaning to start it.
They're coming back with something like that?
No, I'm just in thinking of them doing it again.
Oh
with,
yeah.
Another HBO show. So, just I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on Many Saints of Newark.
Mine are two completely different movies, but I would say I have mixed feelings about The Green Knight and Mortal Kombat.
Have you played a Mortal Kombat game?
I've never personally played it, but I always watched my cousins play it. So with The Green Knight, I like the concept, but I don't know. It's just, I thought at times it was just too confusing, where some things really didn't make sense to me. And I know it's supposed to be an art house film, and it's supposed to be very, basically not mainstream, but I don't know, there's just some parts that I really thought were unnecessary or did not need to be there, or just kind of too confusing. And that kind of took me out of it a little bit. Sometimes some of the surreal stuff took me away from it, and I know that, he's going to go find a tree person, but there's other surreal images there in the movie that kind of just don't really work with me and almost takes me out of it. But I really do like the whole idea of the movie of a person trying to
prove themselves.
Yeah, prove themselves basically. Yeah. Thanks. And I really, really like the last scene of the movie. That scene, in my opinion, was great. I thought that whole sequence was really tense, and I really liked how the movie actually ended. But it's just all the in between. I don't know. I like the setup and I like the conclusion. It's just all the in between that I wasn't too big of a fan of. But I personally, I feel like I watch more mainstream stuff, but I still like watching more award-winning films and stuff. But this one just wasn't necessarily for me. It really didn't 100% capture my interest fully, but I still really like a lot of the things that they did, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful looking movie, and it had amazing cinematography, and it was probably one of the probably besides Dune, probably one of the most visually interesting movies that I saw this year.
I'll lump that into this category also as being a little mixed. The Green Knight's typical A24. It looks amazing, but it leaves you with questions that maybe are not as answerable as some other movies may leave you with, and it's overly surreal at times, but it also has a very cohesive feeling to it. But for the Green Knight, I waited to see since I saw the poster for it and all the press and the trailers I've seen for it, just because it looks so interesting. And I am a fan of A24 movies because I like what they offer. But with the Green Knight, it's such an incredibly impressive and artistic movie that I appreciated on a lot of levels. And I had fun thinking about all the parts of the movie, trying to connect all the dots. The premise of this movie is something that I have a hard time explaining beyond. It's just a knight's journey to prove his courage. But I can clearly understand that there's so much more beyond the surface that I'm both missing, and at the same time, knowing what's trying to be said, but not completely grasping it. Like, I love to see this movie again once it comes to Amazon Prime. I assume it is, because I think most A24 movies go there. Because I wanted to love this movie so much, and that's also why I put it into the mixed feelings category. But I was left scratching my head, unfortunately, and I'm sure a lot of people, even those who really enjoyed it, were left confused. I think that also, on a positive note, adds to a more ambiguous movie that I appreciate more than some other stuff. But that's on me, to be honest, in some parts. And there are people that I've read reviews from who are praising it, and good for them, because I wish I was one of those people. I actually saw a headline that compared The Green Knight to The Seventh Seal, and that's a spot-on observation, if anyone has seen that. But if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that the look of this movie is absolutely astonishing, like Gary said.
Beautiful.
And when it comes to how I feel about the actual movie itself, I was split down the middle, because the main character maintained that automatic sympathy card for most of the movie. I mean, you say to the audience this is the protagonist, so what I mean by that is you just feel that you're on this guy's side. Being that I wanted him to just succeed also just for the sake of a satisfying success just in itself. But on the other hand, I just began to dislike him more as the movie went along. But by the time he reached where he was traveling to, and I forgot how you pronounce the name, it's Gawain, something like that. He's a sinner. He's a coward. He cheats on his girlfriend or his wife. But I have to admit that I was genuinely surprised by the ending when I did feel like I was on his side more, and that kind of resolves some of the times. It resolves some of the times where I didn't feel as sympathetic towards him, and that was a turning point for me with this character. Was towards the ending at the temple. At this time, I saw him. He was more complex. Like, the whole movie is very complex, but you're still able to understand kind of the basic workings of the movie. But as a whole, it's something that you need to go back and watch again if you feel that need to. Well, like I do personally. Some of the other things that happen in between, like the people he encountered or the places he went, kind of lost their significance for me just because of how little I kind of felt it was relevant, or maybe a little drawn out, like how Gary was saying also. I think some of the stuff in here is a little drawn out. But yeah, what I'd say is just that it's a thought-provoking film, to say the least, and it's going to stick with me for sure, even if I didn't completely get it. And from time to time, I get into some surreal stuff. Like, I'm a David Lynch fan. Like Twin Peaks is one of my favorite shows, and his movies are just always interest me, and they're always something unique. But The Green Knight, it's something I just want to go back to. That's what I would describe it as.
One thing I forgot to add is, even though I still have like mixed feelings about it, I think the final line of the movie, that was one thing that really stuck with me, because I thought it was a very powerful final line.
Mm.
And I don't really want to say it, but when you hear it, it's really good.
Yeah.
And that definitely is the part that sticks with me the most from this movie.
And what was the other one you said?
Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yeah.
Very different.
Did it deliver the gore? I think that's my main question because I haven't
Yes.
seen it. Yeah.
That's why I have mixed feelings about it. Because, like, the video game, if you don't know, is super graphic. It's super violent. And my cousins grew up with Mortal Kombat. They grew up in the 90s and stuff. They grew up with that. And I've always seen them, like, play and stuff. So I went to go... I saw this movie with them, and, like, I know what it is. I know, like, what the video game is and stuff. I know it pretty well. And I thought, like, the action and the fights and all the gore and violence was perfect, just like the video game. It was pretty creative, brutal, and it was entertaining. However, the story is so boring.
Yep.
It's so boring. And the main character, I don't even remember his name. It's not one of, like, the characters.
Yeah,
in the
because
video game.
it's not Scorpion. It's not one of the main
it's not.
people from.
I
It's
mean,
a new character.
Like, the main villain is Sub-Zero, and Scorpion does, like, play a part in it, but they're not, like, the main characters. Well, I mean, Sub-Zero kind of is. He's the villain, but I don't even remember the main guy's name. He was so generic. Your basic, like, lead hero. He's so generic.
I mean, I couldn't know less about the movie, but I'm surprised they added a new character. I thought it was, like, something that, like, they already had.
No.
Mainly because, I don't know, I've only played X in terms of modern Mortal Kombat games.
Mm-hmm.
But, like from the 2011 game, like, they retconned the entire thing and started a new story. So I thought they would just adapt, like, the modern Mortal Kombat. Similar to what they did with that Tomb Raider film, where they just adapted the modern stuff and got rid of the old things.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was pretty generic, I thought. I mean, it's kind of expected. It's a video game movie. I obviously did not go in expecting much, and I mean, I kind of got what I was expecting, but I mean, I just don't. It was enjoyable and fun at parts, but it's just like the story is just so boring and generic, and I think they definitely set it up to have a sequel. And
Okay, that sequel is going to bomb.
it's gonna be
very
definitely
bad.
Well, you're assuming it's gonna get made.
It's
Which-
confirmed, I think. I saw it recently.
I look like an idiot now, don't I? I thought it, like, didn't do much at the box office at all.
No, I don't remember it doing too well either, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's not something that I might see it, but I wouldn't go, like, opening day. I would go on, like, a discount day.
2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's the best place. That's the
Basically.
best time to go. What I'd say also to add on to the mixed feelings part is the movie Nobody, which is kind of a John Wick parody movie with Bob Odenkirk starring. And I'll start off by saying that I'm glad Bob Odenkirk is branching out, because he, as amazing as he is in Better Call Saul and as he was in Breaking Bad, he's a great actor, and I want to see him do more things. And I think that a movie like this, which is kind of it doesn't take itself too seriously, is a good fit for him because he does have comedy background. So I was going into this kind of excited to see what it was, but it's kind of just like the definition of mediocre, because it is enjoyable, but the story sometimes, even though I said it's self-aware, sometimes it does take itself too seriously, because it kind of leans into that part of being a John Wick kind of movie, and you think it's going to be a parody more so, but it kind of just turns into a basic action movie in the last half, and it's not really much to interest you. That's just a quick one. Another one is Joel Coen's new movie, Tragedy Macbeth, which is something that I'll blame myself for not really being that into, because it wasn't made for me. I'll admit that. But
honestly, Tragedy Macbeth looks way too art house for its own good.
Yeah.
That's A24, right?
Yeah, it is A24.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, like I said, it's not the movie's fault that it wasn't made for me. It's just the truth. But I don't regret looking at it, not in the slightest. But like we said with The Green Knight, kind of seems like a theme for these kind of movies. But Frances McDormand and Denzel give good performances. Enjoyed that. Like I said, it's great to look at. I would say it's the best shot movie of the year that I've seen, even though it doesn't rank in my top 5 overall. Another one, quick, is Pig, the new movie Nicolas Cage stars in. It's a movie that I've heard a lot of people say very good things about, but I'm just right down the middle with it. It's another one of those things where I don't really have overly positive things to say about it, and I would not call it bad in the slightest. Nicolas Cage gives a good performance. The movie, I don't know, it didn't do much for me. I can't really say much more than that. Then it just didn't do much for me. For people who are interested in crime movies, kind of underground stuff, check it out. I'm sure you're gonna enjoy it. For me, it just didn't do as much as I expected it to do. Another one for me, which both of you have seen also, is The Suicide Squad, James Gunn's new movie. And with this movie, I thought that it was a little overhyped. It was a little too crude for its own good at some parts, and it didn't really impress me that much. But you two, I know you both have more positive feelings on that, so yeah.
So I guess another middle film that I kind of now think about is, a movie I think in the middle is kind of French Dispatch, but more on the little bit of the positive side, because like I watched it twice, and thinking back on it, like it's good, it is definitely good, but like it feels like mixed at some points, and it's really not really cohesively like all there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it's kind of what I think of that film.
Yeah. We discussed it in another episode. It's Wes Anderson's anthology movie. It may feel a little all over the place because it's different stories, but yeah, we talked about it on another episode if you want to check that out.
Actually, yeah, and another one, and it's the last one that I feel mixed on is Jungle Cruise, which at base level is terrible, but like, it's The Rock and Emily Blunt, and it's like, it's okay. Like, it's the characters, it's like the performances that really elevate, like, what is very bad writing and very bad characters into something that is at least enjoyable.
So what? It's like the fifth movie of Dwayne Johnson in the jungle, wearing a faded button-down shirt. All right, that's all we got.
Yeah.
So a dishonorable mention, I would say it's not something I hate, but it's not something I would say I like. Definitely. For me, that's being the Ricardos, Aaron Sorkin's new movie, written and directed by him. It's a movie that just Aaron Sorkin as a whole, he thinks he's much more clever than he is, and it has that typical Aaron Sorkin feeling of being completely unrealistic dialogue, and that's something that I hate, but a lot of people enjoy the movies that he writes, but I personally can't feel that same feeling, even though I do like Social Network. That's the exception for me. But some other movies that I've seen written by him, Moneyball and Charlie Wilson's War, it's the same deal with unrealistic dialogue. Characters aren't bad, but they're just like down the middle, and the writing I think is the biggest flaw for this. But as a whole, I will give it credit for taking a kind of unique route in the biopic genre by not just being about Lucille Ball's life, but taking a certain, like, I think it spans a week. So that was at least sort of interesting, but the movie just did not keep my interest, and I gotta say it was a bore. But Javier Bardem, he at least keeps it somewhat afloat. But as a whole, I would not recommend it at all.
So, have you watched Trial of Chicago 7?
No.
Okay. Because to me, I've watched 2 Aaron Sorkin movies. One is Social Network, and that's fantastic, and Trial of Chicago 7, which I like, those two films I adore. Those are fantastic movies, especially Social Network. But to me, I guess, like, because I'm kind of trying to think back on Trial of Chicago 7, because, like, I can see that, like, somewhat he does seem a little bit too clever. And I don't know. I think I just got to do, like, a whole Aaron Sorkin run.
Yeah.
But, like, to me, I love Aaron Sorkin. So.
Like I said about Social Network, I think that's an exception because I think he has more to play with in that movie, so maybe it gives him more opportunities. And there are definitely times in the Social Network where it has that feeling of being a little unrealistic with the flow of the dialogue. But that movie as a whole, especially with Fincher behind the camera, it's a great movie. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about being the Ricardos.
I guess for dishonorable mentions, I would say Eternals in a sense, because like I kind of want to rope, I guess, like, because it's between that and Shang-Chi, but like I think I like Shang-Chi a little bit more than I did Eternals, mainly because Eternals felt a lot of, like, Eternals was like really overstuffed and at some points just really just annoying with like some characters. It's overstuffed, it's bloated, it's a little too long. Whereas Shang-Chi is the fight scenes kind of keep that afloat, even if like that was the point where I'm like the MCU is getting stale and something needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also like I was kind of like, I think a lot of people were writing on Eternals to kind of change what the MCU could be, and it kind of ended up not doing that, so like it kind of just got stuck up its own butt. But like, I don't know, that's kind of my thoughts on the MCU.
I also have the Eternals as my dishonorable mention because, I mean, I was never like super excited or looking forward to it, but I remember hearing stuff like Kevin Feige say this is the best pitch he's ever heard for a Marvel movie. So I did have, I mean, I don't want to say like I had high expectations, but like I expected to see something unique at least, or something different, and I just couldn't like it. I tried to like it, and I just couldn't find myself enjoying it. And like Nick was saying, it's way too much is going on. It should definitely, I think it would have worked better if it was 2 movies, because way too much is going on. Like, basically the best way that I could describe it is like if in Infinity War they never introduced any of the characters and this is the first time you're meeting them and they're trying to tell their backstories while trying to
I see how that's the problem.
And it's just way too much. And I think it's cut strangely because sometimes it goes to flashbacks that are really long. The flashbacks are maybe like 20 minutes, maybe, and I feel like that's way too long for a flashback. Like, at that point, might as well just make like have that be the origin.
Yeah.
Because there's just, in my opinion, way too many flashbacks, and it just takes you out of the moment of what's currently going on. And also, I thought, kind of like what Nick was saying too, some of the character decisions were kind of strange, in my opinion, where I honestly did not see their reasonings for doing the things that they did, or decisions that they made. And also, this is more of like a nitpick for the MCU in general, but is very relevant in this movie. CGI is terrible. Like, the MCU doesn't really have that great special effects. Really, honestly, the only ones I can think of that look really good are like Infinity War and Endgame. Like, Thanos looks real, but a lot of their other movies feel just so hollow, feel so green screen and fake.
Yeah, I saw an action scene from I haven't seen the movie, but I saw a clip of an action scene from the Eternals. It looks like it's from 2003.
Yeah, basically. And I have a feeling I know what you're talking about, what scene. And it's just like, there's some parts where like characters jump and it looks so terrible. Like, they like jump really quick and high, and like it just looks horrible. Like, it doesn't even resemble anything realistic. It looks terrible. And
I'd say that Eternal CGI is kind of really, it's really bad for,
it had some pretty shots, but like, it's not enough to save it. And also, I thought that the villains, I think they're called like deviants, if I'm not mistaken. There's like these creatures that...
Oh, the deviants, yeah.
Yeah. There's just, I forgot what they do. But
the deviants were stupid.
I thought, I mean, their designs were cool and stuff, but they're wasted. They're supposed to be like the big bad thing in the movie, and then at one point they kind of turn into one, which I thought was pretty cool. They all turn into like this one big deviant, and I thought that was cool, and it like spoke and stuff, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But then it instantly dies. So I just thought, like, what's the whole point of having these things in the movie? There's literally no point. And also, this was a post-credit scene. I have really mixed feelings about Harry Styles.
If we're talking about that post-credit scene, yeah.
What are you just saying?
Harry Styles is in this now.
Yeah.
He's Thanos' brother.
Here's the problem.
Whoa, hold on, what?
He's Thanos' brother.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
The problem with that.
Alright, I was confused when you said Harry Styles. Now you just said Thanos' brother?
Yes.
I don't even know what that means.
Thanos has an adopted brother.
And it's Harry Styles.
Yeah. And
Here's the problem with that whole scene. Because the CG... I think the CGI is the worst in it.
Patton Oswalt troll thing was horrible.
Yeah. I think the CGI is the worst, like, in that particular scene.
Yeah.
And then it's like Harry Styles comes in, and we're all just like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? I was like, I remember like Harry Styles appeared, and I'm like, no, this can't be real.
It makes no sense, and like, it now just like puts the MCU in like, what? It's kind of like, where will this go?
So my question to both of you is, are they continuing with the Eternals?
I don't know,
and is this their new thing that move forward with Shang-Chi and the Eternals? Is there another one?
Black Widow.
The Disney Plus shows.
Yeah, well, at least talking about new ones, Shang-Chi and the Eternals. Are they moving forward with that? Because I've heard good things about it, and you seem to be more so positive on Shang-Chi and just in the middle.
Even if it's a little bit on the derivative side, then the third act's terrible.
So, do you think that they rushed in a little bit to just, instead of introducing, because it sounded like what you were saying, Gary, that they kind of moved past the origin thing? Because I think, do you agree that at least I think Marvel's plan at this point is that they had everyone on board for the first 10 years, but some people have gotten off the boat, like myself, and they seem that they don't really want to waste time introducing all those people, just right away getting into it and setting something up.
Well,
that kind of what it sounds like.
Where did you get off of, just out of curiosity?
At Endgame.
Okay.
I was kind of just done. Then Spider-Man, just because I like Spider-Man.
The thing is, because I was also kind of ready to jump ship after Endgame, but like, I don't know. Like,
not that I'm not open to new characters. I'm just not really that interested personally.
I just think the MCU needs to change.
I'm gonna save this for another time, but I was like starting to lose my interest, but then Loki kind of got it back for me. But I'm gonna save that for another time.
If there's one thing that will kill my interest though in the MCU is the TV shows. Like, I cannot get on board with the MCU TV shows. Like, I'm sorry, like, I just cannot get on board with that.
Have you seen them?
I saw, like, the first couple episodes of WandaVision, and I was like, this is awful. Like, I'm just like, I'm off.
I saw the first half of WandaVision. I actually thought it was kind of interesting, but I heard that it kind of falls off at the end. It becomes kind of typical.
Yeah, like, the finale for WandaVision, I mean, I personally liked it, but it did get a little stereotypical Marvel and stuff, but I thought it had a really nice ending.
Alright.
But, and another thing too, people's expectations are insane.
That is true.
And that's why a lot of people hated the finale, because they were expecting, like, random characters to show up, and that was very clear that it was not going to happen. And, but yeah, I actually really love WandaVision. But anyway, like what I was saying about The Eternals is I don't like the idea that Harry Styles is in it because it just feels like a cheap move to get more people invested. And I mean, do you really need more people?
And especially if you're gonna put like a kind of big character like Thanos' brother, don't use it as a like a deploy cast, I guess, in the case.
Yeah.
Like, just don't cast some random pop star as this big figure.
Yeah.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And also, I will say, I personally liked Shang-Chi. I think probably more than you did. I liked it more. It was my second favorite Marvel movie of the year. But that one actually felt like an origin. Like it felt like it really like established his character and stuff. And I found him really interesting. I liked him. I thought he was really likable. But with the Eternals, I honestly don't care about any of them. Any of the characters, because it's so many of them. I don't even remember how many there were, but it's a lot of them. And I just don't care because they never really like spend time fully with one. I thought like the one they focused on the most in the movie, she was really bland in my opinion. And I honestly can't even remember their names. And like it's hard because if they want me to care in the future, they should have done a much better job. They should have done a proper origin story and not have it be intertwined with a new problem. They should have done 2 movies. If it was 2 movies, I'm sure it would have been much better. I think I actually might have liked it. But since it's just one big, like, it's just like one giant
cluster
thing. Yeah, it's too much, and you don't care about any of the characters, and it's just ultimately really forgettable.
All right. One more I'll mention for Dishonorable Mention is the Russo brothers' first movie since Endgame, which is Cherry, and this movie falls flat in its execution. And though it may have seemed like a good story to tell on paper, the movie lost my interest really quickly. It suckers you into thinking that it's a story about a man's redemption path in his attempt to recover from his PTSD and drug abuse, but instead it presents a character that's so incredibly flawed, or really just someone who has such little to sympathize with, that it lost my attention early on. And I think they just assumed people would sympathize with the character just because it's played by Tom Holland, but it didn't work. It appeared that they were going to go for a full-on PTSD kind of story, but other than 1 or 2 lines after the 45-minute mark, it pretty much is completely forgotten about, and it abruptly transitions to a focus on Tom Holland's character and his girlfriend, which I'll talk about their characters in a little bit, but this becomes more of an issue because she was a side character that was so irritating and nothing more than a plot device, and that's what you thought, at least before it hit the 45-minute mark, about that time. And I felt no empathy at all towards her and Tom Holland as the lead. And Holland, he goes all out in this, I'll give him that, but the poor writing and the plot holes that come along with that just make him very one-note and took me out of the movie. And it made me wonder why I even should have cared about him to begin with. And oddly enough, it doesn't include some of the typical tropes while introducing his character, like if it says that he had a bad relationship with his parents or something, but instead it actually throws in that toxic relationship with his parents thing in a one-off line that it just caused me to just be stuck with the ridiculous relationship that Holland has with his girlfriend, because that is just what they seem to focus on. Because at the beginning it seemed like a kind of war veteran, kind of like the movie Brothers with Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal, which was more about Tobey Maguire played a soldier and dealing with PTSD, seemed like one of those kind of movies, but it just turned into kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde thing after that, and I was not on board. But what baffled me the most was the ending, and really the message in general. Like, I'm supposed to feel like this character has redeemed himself, but honestly I couldn't care less about how he ended up. And the Russo brothers, like, they have potential in directing. Like, this is clearly a competent movie, and potential in directing dramatic movies, that is. Like, I can tell. But it's just, dealing with an unlikable main character is not a good start for a movie. And the story was also just poorly structured as well. Like, I might check out what the Russo brothers do, just because I like their Marvel movies. But this one, just do not check this out. Alright, so on to just our overall least favorite movie of the year. You want to start, Gary?
Sure. I'm not going to spend anything more than a minute on this. But for context, one night I just decided to put a bunch of bad movies on a little wheel, spin it, and whichever one I was going to land on, I was going to watch. And that was, unfortunately, Netflix's He's All That. And, I mean, it's just self-explanatory. If you look at the poster, you already know what type of movie it is.
Is it self-aware bad, or is it
No.
it thinks it's good bad?
No, it thinks it's great.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
It thinks it's cool and, like, with the times, and it's just, it's terrible. It's self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into that. But another movie that I really hated from this year was the new Home Alone movie that came out on Disney Plus. And to be honest, I have no idea why Disney Plus was so proud of this. They kept marketing this for Disney Plus Day. This was the thing in the front that they were showing off the most. Why would you do that? No one's going to...
A movie that no one wants to see.
Yeah, no one's going to... You're not going to get more subscribers. If anything, you're going to lose more. But it's just so sad compared to 1 and 2. I haven't seen any of the other ones after 1 and 2. But it just feels so empty. It really wants to be something new and exciting. And it does try that, and I will give that to them. They do try something new by making the bad guys the protagonists. I'll give them that. That is something new. However, it just doesn't work out. Because then the kid becomes the villain, basically. Because the bad guys are all sympathetic and stuff. I legit felt terrible for them. Because they wanted to... all they wanted to do was have a home for Christmas. They just wanted to have a roof to be under.
How dare they?
And this kid just comes and starts torturing them horribly. And he's just so unlikable. Because, I mean, you know, by making the bad guys so sympathetic, you just don't root for the kid. You root more for the bad guys. And then it's just so stupid. And one scene that kind of just sums up how dumb this movie is the guy, Robert. I don't know, he gets like hit in the head with like a ball or something, and then he's like kind of unconscious, and the kid comes and puts a virtual reality headset on him, and he wakes up and he's in the Grand Canyon and he thinks he's there. He literally thinks he's there, and he looks down and he sees his legs and arms. That's not how virtual reality works. Like, he looks down and you see like the rest of his body. I'm like, do these people even know how that works?
That's like something that happened in an 80s movie.
Yeah. And like, he really thought he was there. He's like, whoa, like freaking out. And it was just so sad and pathetic. And then when they try to be sentimental and all like heartfelt, it's just terrible. Because they spend no time at all developing characters or their relationships with each other. Like, in the first one, it was really bittersweet to see Kevin and his mom get reunited at the end of the movie. In here, when that happens, I felt absolutely nothing. Because they never, like, established that they had, like, a loving relationship or anything. It's just so boring and pathetic. If anything, it feels like a rip-off movie that you'd find for, like, $5 at Walmart. It's just... I guess I appreciate them trying to go a different route, but it was just done so poorly, and I don't recommend it at all.
Alright, so... Oh yeah, I have one more. For my very least favorite of the year, I'm gonna have to go with Don't Look Up, which is Adam McKay's new movie. So Don't Look Up It's self-aware in its intentional over-exaggeration, but it just fails in providing an actual commentary that's interesting. It's impossible not to look at this movie through a political lens because, I mean, it makes you do that on purpose because the pretty blatant messaging, which it's at least aware of, but it doesn't really matter in the long run. And the case provided by the characters in this movie don't keep that aspect of the movie a secret. The movie it's as contradictory and confusing in its characters' motivation and decisions as it is in its real-life symbolism. And the lack of a narrative that really feels like it has a purpose makes the movie as a whole just a complete chore past the 50-minute mark. And speaking of the pacing and really the overall story structure of the movie, it becomes very repetitive and predictable past that aforementioned point in the runtime. In the last half hour in particular, just gives the movie a sense of not knowing what it wants to say and not knowing what it really is, mostly in the government's way too caricatured portrayal. Because yes, obviously I know this is a satire, and the government in this movie isn't supposed to be taken seriously in the slightest, but the lack of any sort of competence on the side of the antagonist just makes her role in the movie just unbearably just pointless and pretty much futile. And they were just completely one-dimensional. And again, a caricature, I think, is the best way to describe it, but in a way that doesn't work. There needs to be some sort of logical base for the antagonist to stand on, and what makes matters worse is that this movie, as it goes on, the protagonist has just become more and more unlikable. And even though Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio gave good performances, I didn't like their characters. Jennifer Lawrence's character was pretty bland and ultimately pointless when you really look at it. And there were some extremely questionable actions made on Leonardo DiCaprio's character's side, which are just desperate and unconvincing. Attempting to have a personal conflict, which the movie didn't really feel like it had the depth to do. And I just lost a lot of interest. And there wasn't really much for me to grab onto. And the message as a whole of Don't Look Up is pretty clear, and it's really what I'd say is the Earth of the movie, and Adam McKay's pen is like the comet of the movie.
So, for me, least favorite, it boils down to two. So first one is Space Jam: A New Legacy, which is dumb. I mean, I like the first one. It's good. It's stupid. It knows that it's stupid. This one is bad. First off, it took LeBron James, and LeBron James is just so bad in this. Like, his acting is so bad, and he's just like, in the film, he's so unlikable. He's like such an unlikable jerk to his son. And then the Looney Tunes are pretty much like nowhere except for Bugs Bunny. And like,
oh really?
Yeah, they're like barely in it except for like the basketball game, which is like the last 15 minutes of the film, because it's all about like just cramming as many Warner Brothers characters as they can.
Oh, okay. So they really went full on with that.
Yeah.
My favorite line from the whole movie is when LeBron is like outside with his sons, and then his wife calls him for dinner, and she says like, "Is pasta or spaghetti or something?" And he's like, "Ooh, my favorite."
Just like the best part is then when he just screams, it's like, oh
yeah,
the scream is so. And then he goes, his scream is so bad.
I mean, Michael Jordan was watchable in the original Space Jam.
And then like there was that whole Michael B. Jordan cameo, which was pretty funny.
Oh, did that actually happen?
Yeah, there was they teased Michael Jordan coming back, and then it's not him, it's Michael. It's not B. Jordan.
You found him?
I can feel his power already.
Ooh, I can hear his shoes. At guard, Thick from North Carolina. Number 23, Michael Jordan.
But like, I feel like they could have gone a lot. They should. What they should have done is just kept it at the Looney Tunes, and that's it.
I mean, that's what I assume. I didn't see it, but I assume that's what they did, and apparently they didn't.
The one like enjoyable part I thought was kind of when they were recruiting all the Looney Tunes. I liked the.
I mean, there were a couple of good cameos here and there, but
I liked when like the Coyote and Roadrunner, how they were in Mad Max Fury Road.
that was kind of clever.
Yeah.
But again, like, just a lot of it just feels so like, oh, we're doing this, like, fan service. Oh, we're creating.
The weirdest thing is that this is a children's movie, and the literal horrible people from A Clockwork Orange were in the back. And I'm like, what? Do they think that children are gonna be like, hey, I know that guy? Like,
I know, my friends, I have been informed in visions that there is a place darker than any prison, hotter than any flame of human fire, where souls of unrepentant criminal sinners like yourselves. Don't you laugh, damn you! Don't you laugh!
I don't know. That's very good.
Alright, and the second one was United States vs. Billie Holiday, which, I'll be honest, like, is just so poorly edited, and that's just what kills the film. There's actually a lot more that kills this film, but, like, I'd say, like, Andre Day's Billie Holiday is still good, but, like, again, that editing, man. It feels like three separate films based on Billie Holiday, and that's not what we want out of a Billie Holiday biopic. Also, like, the villains were just kind of too much, especially when they're just trying to silence Holiday. Which is the whole drive of the film, is essentially Billie Holiday sings this controversial song, they want to try and take her down. It's that, and she gets jailed for obscenity, stuff like that. But, like, it should have just been done more creatively. Like, there's a lot more I wouldn't say there's a lot more creative biopics, but, like, I guess an example is Lenny, which is about Lenny Bruce, who is also a controversial figure, who was also arrested for obscenity many times. But, like, that's not the drive of the film. The drive of this film is, like, Billie Holiday's life as it's, like, mainly just about the government trying to take Billie Holiday down. And that's not really what I wanted out of it, so.
Was that a little bit of a smaller scale movie?
Yeah, it was really on Hulu.
Okay. So now we're gonna talk more positively. We're gonna go to movies we actually liked.
Honorable mentions.
Yeah, we're gonna go on to some honorable mentions. So some movies that I really liked this year include The Last Duel, which is Ridley Scott's new movie, not his other movie, which is House of Gucci, which I didn't bother seeing. Didn't bother seeing it.
Me neither.
No. Which is kind of surprising because it has a great cast, but like
I heard Lady Gaga was really good on it.
Yeah, but I just heard it just wasn't good at all. I'm not gonna check it out, but The Last Duel, definitely check this out. It's a movie that's seriously getting overlooked, and another reason why the Oscars just is not something you should take very seriously at all, because this movie is one of those classic kind of movies that reminds me of Gladiator, which is another Ridley Scott movie, and it's one of those things that you don't see a lot because of reasons like what happened with his performance at the box office, where it just completely bombed. But what I think works best in The Last Duel, it has great characters, the writing is really overlooked, and it's a really interesting movie that keeps you thinking about the morals of it from all different angles, even as the credits roll. It just constantly keeps you thinking. And what I think it works very best in the movie are the subtleties throughout the 3 chapters, because Ridley Scott, he makes sure not to set off any alarms when something small that you should be paying attention to happens, but doesn't act too standoffish to it. If you've seen the movie, then what happens within the chapters makes sense in that way. But his steady direction, it keeps the already strong movie moving really smoothly, and it's just very solid acting that made it a movie that I really enjoyed.
I guess for honorable mentions, I would say for me, there's a lot. I'd say first the Velvet Underground documentary.
I didn't get to check that out.
Okay, so this Because I am a giant fan of the Velvet Underground. I love their albums. They're such fantastic songs. And this feels like them, just like as a documentary form. It does kind of feel like somewhat of a standard documentary, but like it's what it does with that standard documentary format that makes it work so well. Like the shots are incredible. How the story gets told is also incredible, and how like they explain all their backstories and where all the band members came from, and how that and like the people who they got to talk with, also like where they talked to the people like in these like kind of not really well lit rooms was also just so fantastically well done, and just like you kind of see a lot of like love and appreciation for the band in the documentary, and that's what I think I love about it so much. It's just like how much like effort and like how all the people loved it, and like how they were trying to like, I guess, reintroduce the band to a modern generation. But it's also very avant-garde, again, like the band itself, so it works. So if you like the Velvet Underground, you should check it out. Also, one of the honorable mentions is the Suicide Squad, which I loved. I thought it was very good. And what did you say about it? I forget what you said about it.
I think that James Gunn, I'm very glad that he got full range in this movie and just went completely James Gunn with it, but I think sometimes it was a little too much.
Because like, well, that
this is coming from someone who loves Guardians.
Yeah, because I also love Guardians. I do think that like, yeah, he does go a little bit. There's like kind of like too much overboard in like some points, but like through it all, I just thought it was like very good. It knew when to be heartwarming. It knew when to be like, it knew when to take its time, and I just love the characters so much. Deadshot's so good. Have you seen Peacemaker yet?
No, I'm probably not gonna check it out.
Okay, but yeah.
But I did enjoy the movie. It just didn't. It didn't blow me away personally.
All right, that's my thoughts on it.
Well, I'm just gonna go right off of that because Suicide Squad is also one of my honorable mentions, and I pretty much agree with everything Nick says, and I really love the characters. That's probably my favorite thing about the movie is just the characters and how they work off of each other and how the actors portrayed them. I thought it was awesome, and I like too that, I mean, compared to the first one, it's just like this one, I can't like emphasize it enough that it's so much better. And I mean, I kind of feel bad with the first one because again, it's another movie that was tampered with the studio and stuff. They didn't let the director have his full vision. But I mean, to be honest, I don't know how amazing it would have been anyway. But with this new one, I'm happy that they just let James Gunn do whatever he wanted to do, and it just felt like true James Gunn. It's like the most James Gunn movie ever. And I really like his movies because it has everything that I want from a movie, which is like, it's funny, it has heart, action, and really likable characters, and it can get emotional at times. Although I would say that Suicide Squad's not emotional, but it had all those other things, and that's what I like. That's the type of movie that I really like, and I just had so much fun with it. So much fun watching all these characters and stuff, and I thought that it's really interesting too to see him, James Gunn, bring light to a couple of obscure characters that we don't really know or never really heard of, like Polka Dot Man or Peacemaker, stuff like that, where, I mean, they've never been adapted anywhere, they're not popular, so it is really interesting to see them come to light. And
I do think that those characters are perfect for James Gunn too.
Yeah, it's perfect. And James Gunn is so good at writing banter and like dialogue between characters, because I mean, like in Guardians of the Galaxy and in Suicide Squad, it sounds like an actual like group of like, well, in the Suicide Squad's case, it's like co-workers more. It sounds like a group of people that have to work together. Like it's exactly what I would think. of a bunch of like comic book characters with different personalities talking to each other, and I mean I pretty much liked the entire main cast. There really wasn't one of the main group that I didn't like. I really liked all of them, and I also really liked too that in this movie there was actual stakes, and I mean it was kind of sad to see some of them die, but you kind of need that in a movie called The Suicide Squad.
True.
And it's the whole premise of, I mean, even in the comic books and everything, it's the whole premise that they die if they fail their job. So I'm happy that he actually showed the consequences and actually had stakes, because in the 2016 one, there was no stakes. No one was ever in danger. No one died. And in this one, you don't want to get too attached to some of them. And I feel like at first when I saw the trailer and I heard that the main villain was going to be Starro the Conqueror, I wasn't so sure how that was going to work out, because it's literally a giant starfish. And I was like, I don't know if that's a little too unrealistic, but I thought it fit really well with the movie. I didn't think it felt out of place or whatever. I thought it fit pretty well. And I mean, they have a humanoid shark working with them, so it just fits. And it took me a little while to realize that King Shark was Sylvester Stallone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see voice recordings for that. I really would. But I just enjoyed it so much, and it is easily one of my favorites of the year.
Just some other ones I'll rattle off as being honorable mentions, because we've already talked to them at length in other episodes, are Dune, which is my second favorite movie of the year. What I'll say about it is that I'm very much looking forward to part 2, and I think that I'll enjoy Dune, which came out last year, even more after I see part 2 and watch it as a whole. I also mentioned West Side Story, which is a solid movie from Spielberg, which we also did an episode on. French Dispatch, which is Wes Anderson, again, being the most Wes Anderson he can possibly be. Enjoyable movie. First part, really loved it, and I really want to see it again, because I think we'll get more out of it. I guess I'll mention Bo Burnham's Inside, which is something I very much enjoyed. I've watched it a bunch of times now. Yeah, go ahead.
To me, Bo Burnham's Inside, which is like good, but to me is just a thing in music videos. It's not really. It's just music videos just kind of strung together by nothing.
See, I think that works best for him. Because what did you go in expecting?
I guess it's like the overwhelming critical sense was just like I guess I couldn't really figure out what like all the hype was really about, because like the individual songs are good, but now that like I think about it, it's loosely strung together, but like I think like you said, it's what he does with those songs that and like the camera work that makes
it's also him going back to his roots.
Yeah.
But I think that even though I really like it, it's definitely like way overhyped. So don't go in expecting so much out of it. It's good. It's worth watching more than once, and the songs are great. One more thing I'll mention, even though it's not a movie, is the Beatles documentary Get Back, which was overall my favorite thing I saw this year. Even though it's a miniseries documentary, it's just something that it's made for Beatles fans. Like, you can't watch it unless you are a fan of the Beatles and know their music and know the history, know the context.
I think it's more, you kind of have to go in knowing really what's going on. You can't really know, like, you kind of have to know the Beatles in order to like it and, like, know what really happened. And to me, like, Get Back is, like, really, it's so slow. It's slow as hell.
Yeah.
But it is so fascinating. It's kind of just, like,
it is.
Because it's just kind of fascinating to see how, like, these people, like, these four guys made, like, arguably the best songs in the history of music in just like a couple of months. It's it's crazy to think about that.
I mean, take this as you will, but this is honestly one of my favorite things I've ever seen. I think it's also will forever change how I look at not only music biopics, but just biopics in general. Because like the first time you hear any part of Let It Be, it's off in the background as other people are talking to each other. It's not some like crane shot coming in on Paul McCartney, putting his fingers on the keys of the piano, and then a light bulb going off in his head. Like the first time you hear The Long and Winding Road, there's a guy talking into Paul's ear as he's trying to figure out the song. Not that I thought that life as shown by Hollywood was reality before watching this, but the whole documentary really opens your eyes to what the real process is like. And there all are moments that feel very cinematic though, like Paul looking like he's holding back tears when shortly after George left and when John wasn't showing up to the studio. But with this doc, you know that it's actual footage, so it hits all the harder.
Yeah, I guess I would say the same thing about the Velvet Underground doc, which kind of...
I really gotta check that out.
It does change how I view docs, even if it's more standard doc stuff. But it's kind of what they do with that doc stuff that kind of makes it interesting. Like, you'll take those two shots, and it will just kind of explain, like, what, like, they were thinking.
Is it more of an, like, interview-based kind of documentary, or is it more like this? Or a mix?
I would say it's kind of a mix, because it is definitely interview-based. It is straight-up interview-based, no matter what. But it's kind of what they do with the interviews that makes it cool. But it's also, like, the people who they interview.
Yeah.
It's not like they get random, like, producers, engineers. They get, like, actual, like John Waters and, like, Jonathan Richman of Modern Lovers, like, to do it. And it's so interesting, mainly because those people were, like, around the time of Velvet Underground's thing. And it and it's more, and I like, it's more, you know what it's more, like, filmmaker based and more like the shots are really cool and like the colors and like how the colors feel a little bit like not that saturated, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah, with that, I mean, I really gotta check that out, like I said. But with Get Back, it's similar to another one of my, like, this and my other favorite documentary that I've seen that's come out in recent years is Apollo 11, which is another documentary that does not include interviews. It's just straight up footage that has been remastered, similar to Get Back. Well, not similar, exactly the same, like how Get Back was put together. But again, going back to Get Back, in contrast to the more dramatic moments, like I mentioned, what stood out to me the most was the more subtle things in part 1 leading into the first 20 minutes or so of part 2. And that was how Ringo is such a go-with-the-flow kind of guy, but during the very same time as the moment I mentioned with Paul, when George wasn't showing up, Ringo seems a little off. And that's something that you feel like may be a little overdone in the movie, but again, like I said, this is real footage, so it makes you feel so much more connected to what's going on. And,
a thing about it, because, like, a couple of years ago, me and my mom went to, like, this like, Beatles showcase, like, at my local, like, art theater, I guess I'll call it. And it was, what it was just kind of like, this guy just going up and showing, like, how the songs off Let It Be and Abbey Road were made, and just, like, how they were mixed, and what John Lennon's life was like at the time, and like the protest stuff, and how Paul McCartney was doing stuff, and like how I think it was Ringo Starr who was like in the filming, was doing the film. And to me that was really interesting because like it pulls back another layer of the Beatles to me, and that's what I think this documentary does best.
Yeah,
just,
I agree.
Gives another look at the Beatles and how like they really were thinking. Mm-hmm. And I would like, I guess like I would like something like this, but for, I guess like would be a content, like What do you think
I wonder if
would
they had
work?
footage though. You mean as another band?
Yeah, that would work in the Get Back treatment, just out of curiosity. Which is what that new Kanye doc's supposed to be, like the Genius thing. Which is supposed to just be footage of him just like doing stuff.
See, that's what I like best.
Mhm.
Like, if I could see stuff with that, like with Skilly Dan or something like that, which
That would be
I don't,
dope.
I don't think. Well, I think also it would be kind of.
No, that would actually be so cool.
I know it would be so cool, but I feel at the same time it'd be really tedious because they're
No,
such
it would be-
perfectionists.
Yeah. No.
So
That is entirely studio stuff.
Yeah.
But like,
Pink Floyd maybe.
yeah, no,
That'll be
that would work
amazing
so much better.
seeing them doing that.
No, it works so much.
But also another thing is that, and this is no hate to Let It Be, the album, because I think it gets a lot of unnecessary hate, but it just is kind of unfortunate how, even though it's a really fascinating moment in the Beatles' history, but it's kind of unfortunate how it's one of the least interesting albums of theirs. When you talk about post Rubber Soul, Rubber Soul and afterwards.
Post
like-
Revolver Beatles, I guess.
Well, I mean, even Rubber Soul would be really interesting to see. But,
like
like
it's
seeing the White Album or something like that would be insane.
Oh my god, the White Album, yes.
Which has...
is my favorite Beatles album.
Good,
The White
alright.
Album.
Alright, well, the White Album is... I think it's time for me to say that it's tied with Abbey Road, if not my favorite over Abbey Road at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I don't know. That'll be really interesting. I wish that there were more opportunities to see real footage. Like, I've seen documentaries.
No, I think
the classic albums documentaries, which are hour-long documentaries you can find on YouTube or on Amazon Prime, which are really interesting and it has interviews from the real people. Like, I watched Steely Dan, The Making of Aja, and it's really interesting, but again, seeing the real footage just makes Get Back all the better.
yeah. So like, do you know
Oh,
like?
also, there's a Crimson King documentary coming out. I just saw a trailer for it.
Oh my god, I'm so hyped for that.
I just saw that, yeah.
Yes. Cause like, do you know like the story of how there's like that Get Back is essentially just like old footage of like a film that was shelved because
Yeah,
the Beatles
yeah.
didn't want it. Because there's a similar thing with the Rolling Stones, but like unlike Get Back, it shows them just at their worst, just partying their asses off, just, like, getting super drunk. And it's another film that got like just like shelved for
Shelved,
years, and
yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if they're going to do the same thing with that, just like edit
I mean, I hope.
a bunch of footage of them just like kind of at their like worst, but like just kind of showing what it was like to be like the
Yeah,
greatest like
yeah.
rock and roll band.
I mean, like you said, at their worst, that's like the most interesting stuff, though. Like how Paul says in, like I was talking about this real quick. Like, what's insane and hilarious at the same time to me is that 3 songs from the album Let It Be are taken from the live rooftop performance. I didn't even know that going in. They're on the verge of getting arrested, more or less, in London in January. Which John even says that his fingers are getting too cold to even play a chord. And minutes after a take that they actually used on the album, their equipment is beginning to get unplugged. So, I mean, to go even further, there's a guy holding up the words to Dig a Pony on a clipboard for John, because at this point he didn't know all the words down pat. But like
And I think
you
that
were
was
saying,
also kind of interesting on
Yeah.
the Beatles like status, like that.
It's very
rooftop
honest, very honest,
performance
too.
Was the last really Beatles performance
Yep.
ever, so it kind of takes on this like mythical quality of just like
absolutely.
this once incredibly popular band just like just having their last performance be like this weird rooftop thing where you said like they were on the verge of getting arrested.
Yeah, it's what's the weirdest thing about that how it feels is that it feels like something straight out of a movie. Like that's over dramatic, even though it really happened.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about at their worst, when you're talking about Rolling Stones, and a lot of some of the tension that was in Get Back, Paul says it best when he says that they're the best when their backs are against the wall, and I can't disagree with that. And that's what makes the documentary my favorite documentary that I've ever seen. And the payoff at the end is huge, and it just completes feeling whole, even though it may feel a little sporadic at times.
Mm-hmm.
But I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that was kind of it for me for honorable mentions.
I think that's it for me too.
I have a few more.
Okay. Yeah.
So, another one that is in my honorable mention is Disney's recent animated film Encanto. I thought that I think it's my favorite animated movie that I've seen from that year, and I just think it was so. I say this all the time with Disney and Pixar, but their visuals are just amazing, and I don't understand how they're so good at it. And every time it's just improvements upon improvements, and it's no different with Encanto. It's such a pleasing, visually pleasing movie to look at. Super colorful, super saturated, super detailed, and I just think that it's like eye candy, basically. And also, I really like the songs in it. I like it personally a lot because it does hit close to home, where a lot of them feel very cultural, and like it feels like, you know, it's nice to hear songs like that, and it's pretty cool. And they're very catchy though, very catchy. They get stuck in your head. And I really like the different approach they took in this movie, because of course there are some classic Disney tropes, but I feel like they did steer away from tropes that they've been doing recently in their other animated films, where there's a random twist villain that comes out of nowhere. That didn't happen here, which was nice to see. I thought it was going to happen, but thankfully it didn't. Because it's just so unnecessary sometimes. It's just like a last minute thing, you know, that they do. Try to get one last reaction out of you. But that wasn't necessary here. And also, I think, kind of going off of that, it's really cool that there's no villain at all in this movie. Like, there's no, like, true antagonist in this movie, which is pretty cool. Because you don't always necessarily need one to keep your story going. It's a lot of internal conflict and conflict between family members, but the other family members are not they're not villains. They're you know, it's just conflict.
Yeah.
You know? And I thought that was really interesting. I thought at first I thought Disney was ripping themselves off with Pixar, because I guess they saw that success and wanted to try something of their own, but they did do something unique. It's really different. I mean, I guess you can argue like some of the soundtrack music in the back might sound similar, but other than that, they're two completely different movies.
So Encanto starts out great with Welcome to the Family Magica, and then it kind of just gets irritating. I think the irritating point is just like how everybody just sings their emotions, and that really just is annoying. I also hate how this Bruno character, which I like Bruno, I could like the character, but I hate how like there's this, we don't talk about Bruno, like there's a whole song dedicated to that, and it's like you kind of you're hammering in the point here. But then I thought back on it, and then I thought about Raya and the Last Dragon. Now that is another Disney film that came out this year, but that's not that, which is not a good film, mainly because it's forgettable and the message sucks.
Yeah, it's a terrible message.
They contradict themselves constantly with that message, but with Encanto, they get it right, and I like Beatrice's performance. She was very well. She did a very good job as Maribel. This is a kind of character thing, because I love Maribel. She was a very good character, and yeah.
I think the message of Encanto is so much better than Raya, or
it's not even that it's better. It's just more. It's just better executed.
Yeah, but also, I mean, I just think it's also, to me, it's just a much better message, and also, I think they really executed probably the best. Like out of all their like recent things, this is probably one of the better ones, I think. And it's interesting because they talk about a lot of themes that I necessarily haven't seen, especially in an animated movie. I mean, like generational trauma. That's not something that you really see. Or like, you know, how you know, like the different roles of family members and how they differ and how they kind of clash with other generations. I thought that was really interesting. And like what I was saying before, it's like it's kind of different than most of their other modern things because it doesn't end the way you think it would. It ends, I guess, almost realistically, and it's not like for example, like it's not like the character got what they wanted in the end. They just accepted the way things were, and I thought that was really interesting, and I think a pretty good message too overall. Because I mean, you know, that doesn't always happen in life, but also like kind of going off of what Nick was saying with Stephanie Beatrice, I was so shocked because I started watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine before I saw Encanto, and I just could not process at all how she played this like super energetic character in one movie, and then in the other show she's like super serious and like might kill you. So I guess credit to her for good voice work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally recommend this if you like animated movies or Disney in general. And I think this is one of their better ones. Not my favorite one of their modern ones, but definitely one of their better ones, in my opinion. And I also want to give a little shout out to Godzilla vs. Kong because it was one of the most fun times I had in a movie theater. Because, I mean, yeah, it's not anything spectacular. It's not Dune. It's not winning a single award, but it's just entertaining. It's just so fun, and it's just the exact type of blockbuster you want to see and what you expect. Because I feel like a lot of the issues with the like monster movies that they've been making lately is they're not in it. They're just in it for like 5 seconds, and that's it. And you're stuck with a bunch of boring human people that you don't care about. Story's not interesting at all, and you know, it's just overall doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth. But with Godzilla vs. Kong, they go straight to the point. They don't care. They don't try to like establish any sort of character or anything. They don't. The story is super simple, and they just go right for it because they know what you want, and I guess they listened to all the criticisms from before, and they just gave you exactly what you would expect: 2 giant monsters just fighting, going at it. And this is probably I would put it up there with Dune and Green Knight for visually stunning, because especially the fight scene in Hong Kong, it looks so beautiful. And also, that's the other thing too, with the fight scenes, it's clear. It's not shaky. There's no like rain or dust or debris everywhere where it kind of makes it hard to see like in the other movies. It's very clear, and I love that, and it's very bright, very saturated, and it's so much fun in my opinion. And I think it's impossible to not have fun. Either you have fun watching it or making fun of it. Whatever, I think it's so hard not to have fun. And this is a movie that's like perfect for theaters. It's meant for theaters. And I mean, now it's like too late to go see it in theaters, but it's just awesome because, and also it's probably one of the loudest movies I've ever heard in my life. It is so loud. Once the movie ends, I feel so weird. But also it is pretty special because it was the first movie that I saw after since March of 2020, So it was really nice to just be in the theater again, just like old times. So it does have like a little special place because it was the first movie in the pandemic era that I seen. And
Came out before A Quiet Place?
yeah,
Oh.
Yeah,
I think like final week of March, I think it came out. And it was so nice to like just be back in the theater and just seeing a movie like that, like a big blockbuster movie. It just felt great. And the other last thing that I want to quickly shout out, it's not a movie, but it's close enough. WandaVision. It's easily one of my favorite Marvel projects in recent memory. One of my favorites. I love it so much because I feel like it's what Marvel needs. It's something creative, something unique that kind of like strays away from what they typically do. WandaVision, in my opinion, is pretty different than all their other stuff. I mean, compared to all their other shows, I thought WandaVision is the most unique one. And I kind of feel like what I was saying before, how Marvel has terrible CGI. A lot of their movies are kind of ugly. Like, I'm not like horrendous, so you can't look at it. But like, I mean, if you compare it to like every other movie in the world,
Yeah.
it just looks so
Yeah.
bland, you know, like so colorless, kind of almost like hollow.
Mm.
But WandaVision was super creative, in my opinion, with the whole idea of going through different generations of television and starting from black and white all the way to more modern, like The Office type look. I thought it was so creative and clever, and it looked like it was visually fun. It was so fun to look at, like all the different outfits and the sets, the props. I really give it to all the costume designers and all the like artists behind it, because they did a really good job, I think, at capturing the feeling of shows from different eras. And I also think that Elizabeth Olsen and Catherine Hahn both did phenomenal at playing one character but in different time periods. And I thought that was pretty awesome, because I feel like that's kind of hard to do, to play like the same character but they fit with the different time period. And I thought they both did a really good job. And as like, I think the goal of a lot of these Disney Plus shows is to, well, obviously like further the, like expand the universe more, but I also think they try to make certain characters more likable. And I definitely think they made Wanda much more likable than she was, because originally, before WandaVision, I never really cared all too much about her, because they never really focused on her.
I wonder
She
if they
was
had
always
plans
just
to
there.
do something like this before.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because they really
But-
didn't really focus on her that much.
Yeah, she was always just in the background. She was never the central focus of anything. And with WandaVision, I really like her now. She's easily one of my favorites now. I think they really did a good job. And I guess like the one thing I'm kind of mixed on is like with the whole like villain, with Agatha Harkness being the villain, because like I personally loved her, but at the same time, the show, to be honest, didn't really need that element to it, because I thought like the whole Wanda coming to terms that, you know, grieving and stuff, I thought that was good enough to be like the quote unquote
Right.
villain. Like it's a perfect conflict in my opinion, and something very different for Marvel. But I mean, at the same time, I really loved Catherine Hahn's performance as Agatha. I thought she was great. I really liked her, and she has like the catchiest song ever when they reveal her. But yeah, I love WandaVision, and it's easily one of my favorite Marvel projects, and it makes me much more excited to see what they do with Wanda next. And I also really like too that we know that obviously Wanda's a hero and stuff, but they don't shy away from like treating her like a villain in the show, because whatever she's doing is a villainous act. So I also like that too, that they didn't just like sugarcoat everything that she did.
Yeah, I think that's also I mean, as much as I'm off the Marvel train, I think that's what Marvel needed. That was something that was familiar, but also had some new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. An honorable mention for me, which is the last one, would be Spider-Man No Way Home, which we're gonna have another episode on, but I'll throw it in there as it didn't make my top 5 of the year, but I'll throw it in there, and we're gonna have another episode on that. So we'll go into our very favorites of the year now. Nick, you want to start off?
Yeah, because I think you and mine are the same.
Okay.
Licorice Pizza.
Yeah, that's my favorite of the year.
Yeah. So I guess you could. I guess I'll start with my thoughts because I was so insanely hyped for this because it started with the characters and then Life on Mars starts playing and it's like, and then I saw it and I was like, this is so good. I mean, like, it's another character movie where the characters just evolve this from something that would just be to so ungodly fantastic because the characters in this are insanely good. They kind of make the film because the film is generally plotless. There's no plot. It's kind of just watching these two characters, but I don't care because I like these characters so much that and then the performances by Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim, who's a part of the band Haim, which I only knew about very recently.
Same with me. Yeah.
They knock it out of the park, man. Their performances just make the characters just elevate that status. I also just kind of love the look of the whole film and how it's just so warm and inviting. Yeah, that's kind of it for me on that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of PTA. Paul Thomas Anderson, who wrote and directed this, and it's the first PTA movie I saw in theaters. I didn't see Phantom Thread when it came out. I wasn't exactly both that demographic or as much into movies as I am now when it came out. Licorice Pizza is pretty much everything Nick said. It's a great movie with great characters that is one of those things that I feel like I really needed at a time like this when I saw a lot of movies that were good but didn't have that feeling of being something as original as something like Boogie Nights. This is something like
Punch Drunk Love,
something like There Will Be Blood. And even though this has a completely small scale, more down to earth. It's not one of those big epics like There Will Be Blood, but it's still a great movie that, even though it's my 4th favorite PTA movie, it's still a great movie just because he has that great resume where I would put Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood, and Magnolia, which are just all fantastic movies. Paul Thomas
is so good. Yeah.
Licorice Pizza, it's something that I think everyone should check out as something for everyone to enjoy. It's one of those movies that it has serious themes, but it doesn't get heavy-handed. It's still very enjoyable. Has an amazing soundtrack, as PTA's other movies.
The soundtrack is so incredible.
But you got Bowie, you got Wings, you got Doors. Someone else too. I forget. But yeah, that's my favorite movie of the year. Absolutely loved it. It's something I will be checking out in the future.
In
more and
other
more.
coming of age films, it kind of just shows the character just kind of growing up and just going through life. This one just kind of
throws you
doesn't do that and just kind of shows these characters more or less just going about their day.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to get a point in about growing up, it's more just here are these characters just kind of going through random things.
Mm-hmm. The writing in this movie also is just fantastic, I think. And I think it shows the best in the opening scene where Cooper Hoffman is following around Alana Haim's character throughout. It's a long shot that probably lasts at least 2 minutes, and it's introducing both of the characters, and it says so much about what the story is going to be. It shows the conflict, it shows the character traits, and above all, it's just a great shot that shows what the movie will look like, and it sets the tone for the movie right away. And I was completely invested this entire movie, and I think that a supporting actor shout out needs to go to Bradley Cooper, who is absolutely hilarious in this movie.
Yeah.
Which one's in charge? Are you in charge?
Yeah, I'm in charge.
May I just speak with you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. You can tell your crew to stop.
Stop for a sec, guys.
So this is what I want to say to you. Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Do you know who my girlfriend is?
Barbra Streisand?
Barbra Streisand.
Sand.
Sand, yeah, like sands. Like the ocean, like
Barbra
beaches.
Streisand?
No, like Streisand.
Sand.
Streisand.
Streisand.
Barbra Streisand.
Barbra Streisand.
Also, I'd say, yeah, that's the best secondary character. We got, for the soundtrack, we got Nina Simone, Bing Crosby, Chico Hampton, Sonny and Cher, Chuck Berry, The Doors, Wings, David Bowie, Clarence Carter, Donovan, Johnny Greenwood, and Gordon Lightfoot, and that's just to name a few.
Who did Stumbling In?
Stumbling In.
Towards the beginning. I love
Susie
that song.
Quattro.
Yeah, Susie Quattro. Yeah, I love that song. I think that worked really well. And it's also one of the movies where I remember where each of the moments, what the music accompanied the scenes. I remember those scenes because, not only because of the music, but I also remember what it was attached to.
Yeah.
And
I mainly
it's such a great movie.
Yeah, I'd say that for me, the song that kind of clicked was "Life on Mars" because that was the perfect song for this film.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
was in the trailers, but it was.
I've heard some people actually say that it was too on the nose, Life on Mars, but no.
No.
I do not agree with that.
But Part of the Door was another great.
Another song I think worked really well was "Let Me Roll It," Paul McCartney Wings song, which worked very well in that moment where Cooper Hoffman and Elena Haim were laying down in the bed. I thought that was a great moment. Go ahead, Gary.
Wait, I have one question about
Yeah.
it though.
Yeah.
Why is it called that?
Well, so Licorice Pizza was the name of a record shop in Hollywood at the time when PTA was growing up, and it's just called that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering like the entire time, like, that's the weirdest name ever for
Yeah.
a movie. But I really want to see it.
But it's not gonna fit like that. The offbeat tone of the film.
Mm-hmm. I really want to see it. I think it's still in theaters.
Is it?
Yeah. I saw it.
Hope it makes money.
Anyway, my favorite is Spider-Man No Way Home. And it was just such an amazing theater experience. It's probably some of the most fun I had since Avengers Endgame, and I'm gonna go more in depth about it in another episode, but it was easily.
I'll leave it with this. This is how you do a trilogy ender.
All right.
To be continued in the next episode, discussing our most anticipated of 2022.